Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Limitless Education Xchange. This is Andrea Harris. I am the founder of Bloom at Home Learning, and we're really excited to get this platform started.
Oh, yes, indeed. We have been talking about it for quite some time, and I'm so excited to dive in with the amazing Andrea. My name is Jeannette Eastin. I'm the founder of Refound Education, also known as Refound Ed. And we wanted to bring more information to the people. And thank you, Andrea, for doing this with me and going on this journey. Why don't you share some more about your background?
I'm just really excited to do this with you. Thank you, Jeanette. So to give you a little bit of background, Jeanette and I are both educators that left the system in major school boards in Ontario. Jeanette and I connected late in the summer of 2021 when there were major shifts going on in the education setting. And we just clicked. So I think that this podcast will have so many different amazing topics that we can expand on in the school system, in alternative education, and in the different options that parents have moving forward in 2024, 2025 and beyond. So I think it's really an important perspective to gain awareness of, in that being in the system for over 2 decades, we saw a lot of really important and applicable things happening that we can share from our perspective as to why parents really do want to make the transition as soon as possible to homeschooling. And I think that it's probably going to be important, Jeanette, if we explain what alternative education is. So did you want me to go into that or?
Yes, but first and foremost, I want you to share with everyone how what you launched and a little bit more about Bloom at Home Learning.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So I taught for over 21 years in one of the largest school boards in Ontario, and I loved my job. I loved it. I went to school at Western for university, then I went to OISE for my Bachelor of Education. I have lots of specialties under my belt, as well as spec ed specialist. So it was never a situation where I didn't love teaching. I always loved it. I loved the kids. I loved my students year to year. I loved the setup. I'm kind of missing that every August now, not setting up my classroom. However, when I saw the shift that was happening after 2020, a lot of things were brought into my perspective that I hadn't seen fully until that time, that were against my morals, against my ethical values, just in what was happening to students and the kids around me. And I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. So I went through a transition. And in April of 2022, I resigned from my six-figure cushy government. No, I won't say cushy, but from my six-figure job, I was about to retire in 9 years. I had no backup. I have 3 children and I am a single mom, and I had nothing to fall back on, but I just knew that there was something better out there for kids. There had to be a better way to pull them out of the system and not have them be a part of something that was causing long-term trauma and destroying a lot of kids. It was very, very sad. So I started Bloom at Home Learning, where I can consult with parents who are wanting to leave the system or who have left, and find curriculum that works, troubleshoot through best ways and approaches to have their child learn. I think what sets us apart is that because we've been in the system, I am not saying that you need to be a teacher to teach your own child. You absolutely do not. I think that is one of the lies propagated in order to have people stay in the system through like a fear model. However, we all get to those instances where we have tricky times with our kids, right? I outsource a lot of different topics with my own kids and their homeschooling journey. And it's probably an important time that I mention I actually don't like the term homeschooling, because I think bringing school into your home is not what you want to do, right? I think that the schooling model is based on Oh my goodness, we could go into this in a whole topic, but it's based on something that was invented, I mean, over a century ago, and very
Russian.
little has changed since that time, right? So I think to bring the whole model of doing school 9 till 3:30 every single day, and you do different topics and you have different time frames involved, is really not in the best interest of how we learn. If we think about as adults how we learn best, it's that you fully immerse yourself into topics that you are really enjoying, and you give yourself the time to be able to learn and explore and do hands-on activities in like a non-time zone area, right? So there's not going to be a bell saying after 45 minutes you need to switch to a new topic. So I think that is an important thing. I prefer at-home learning or home education, because I think all kids can learn and it doesn't necessarily have to be in a school setting, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. It's when do you stop learning? You learn interacting with the world, you learn interacting with each other. It's when do you stop? And to see it, you're right within like this specific time frame, um,
Mhm.
is just kind of silly.
Exactly. So that's how I transitioned. I'm sure we'll get into future episodes about what we can share about what was happening in the school system. But it just came to a crossroads where I wanted to find something new. So I was glad to connect to a lot of like-minded educators in that they saw that the school system was crumbling, and they knew that in order to leave it, we had to pave new ways of doing things, right? It would be like this is a perfect analogy of building a house, right? If you buy an old house and you're buying a house, for example, say it's exactly like the school system, and you buy a house that was built over 100 years ago. Obviously, the foundation of that house is probably not going to be up to 2024 code, right? Things have changed. We've tweaked things to make them more safe. And obviously, codes and building codes and inspections are all there to keep us safe, right? So I think that the fact that if you're buying a home where it's an older one, and it probably needs to be rebuilt, right? So the foundation isn't solid, nothing else is going to be. You're not going to want to renovate the second floor of a home that doesn't have a solid foundation. So that's what I think we are seeing in the grand scheme with the school system, is that the foundation is not there. It's unsustainable. What we're seeing right now is we could briefly touch on all the subjects, like the violence, the bullying, the not meeting kids' needs, right? It doesn't meet children's needs at either end of the developmental spectrum. So gifted children are being overlooked. And then at the other end of the spectrum, students with special needs who are very, very high needs and need specialty services are just being lumped into regular classrooms, which is not the definition of inclusion, right? They aren't having the support systems needed in terms of fulfilling and meeting those children's needs. So teachers are becoming burnt out. There's support staff that are becoming very overworked. And what we're seeing now is just the crumbling of the system, because there's so many facets that are failing all at once, which we can talk about more together in new episodes.
For sure. It is such a broad topic, and I'll dive into a little bit about my background, and then we're going to kind of wrap things up with the why we're doing this. Andrea has
Yeah,
some
that sounds great.
wonderful points. So my journey was similar to Andrea's, 2 decades. I didn't always want to be a teacher, actually. That was the last thing I wanted to be, but I was a CYW for um, more than 20. It's crazy how time flies.
Wow.
I'm like 23 years. Ah! But essentially, so then I had gone through teachers college later in life. But through that
Yeah.
journey, I did some worked kind of in the social service sector. So advocating for children, advocating for the families, worked with police, worked with mental health resources and other professions, hospitals, group homes. I taught at the college level for a while, and I was really involved. I had wanted to be a guidance counselor. I never really had a chance because there was too many politics in the system, but I had a lot of friends who were in HR, innovation, tech, fashion, music, and they exposed me to lots of people in all these different industries, which gave me a really interesting lens that I brought back to the kids. And I loved doing the counseling aspect. The problem is they don't pay you enough. So
They
that's
do
why
not. That
I
could
went
be a
into,
whole episode.
right. And then I went into teaching
Yeah.
thinking I was going to make some big bucks. And needless to say, you do not start at six figures. You start very low and you do not get any bonuses, EAs, CYWs included, for doing a good job, which is really sad to say. But so essentially, I had been working hard for a profound amount of time. And then I had my children. So I had my first, the insanity that was the last 4 years happened. And in that, I was pregnant with my second. Anyone who's been pregnant, I feel understands that your filter is doesn't work as well. You're a little bit more loud, uncomfortable, sweaty,
Absolutely.
going through all the motions of, pregnancy. And so I had an opinion, a loud one, and my husband essentially said, like, you're going to go viral in a horrible way. You are smart enough, you are capable, just go. Um, so I did go on initial leave. I had opened a micro school.
Hmm.
And then I had sold it, but before selling it, I had reached out to other micro school owners because I'm a collaborator type. And I had asked people like, who wants to work together? The response was so profound, so profound that we put on a conference. We had over 30 vendors, over 240 people showed up, and the support was just so heartwarming. And in this process, I met incredible souls like Andrea, so many dedicated professionals. And it got me thinking, like, why am I in a school system that counters my moral compass? And bearing witness to everything they're doing it was becoming cruel to watch. And so I jumped like crazy Andrea with no net. Um, Not to knock some of the people that took us a little bit more of a transition. I understand why, because
There's a lot still in the system, still planning that transition right now. So
yeah, but they are making plans. So that warms our
yeah,
heart that you guys are just getting into gear. And we want to be able to give you guys the information and learn from our mistakes too, right? Because the faster we learn as a collective, which is why it's like an education exchange, um, the faster we can lift each other up. Um, and then, yeah, so after I just dedicated myself to Refound Education and helped as many parents and educators as I can. And there's a snowball effect. It is a hard journey. We're not going to discount that, but we're going to start sharing more on the social media account about business skills. And we're going to do a lot of this podcast will focus mostly on just the changes in education because there's going to be so
absolutely.
many.
There
And
are.
just like Andrew, like you said, it's one of those things that the house being built on a foundation. But, back in the days, we thought, oh, you're going to grow up and be a teacher, doctor, lawyer. But the
Yeah.
reality is, like, we were just talking about the gig economy.
Yeah.
So it's,
I think those are all really good points.
yeah, and with the, different new opportunities and innovations that are going to challenge our existence, it will be important that we give children the best guidance, and we are here to help you on that journey of guidance so that you can best explain to them how
Absolutely.
things are going to evolve, how we can build a new foundation that is stronger and more impervious to everything.
I think those are all really great points, Jeanette. And I do want to refer people back to you from the business side of things too. Jeanette has such a vast background in all of the things that you are interested in. She is a wealth of resources for teachers who do want to leave the system, or educators, any kind of educator. So I will preface by saying, when we say educators, we could mean teachers, we could mean support staff like early childhood educators, we could mean educational assistants, we could mean CYWs. There's a vast majority of professionals who have dedicated their lives to children who are very unhappy in the school system, and it is possible to transition. So Jeanette has all the resources for that. And I do have to also say that since 2021, when I've had lots of clients call for consultations on what they could do during the height of mandates that they disagreed with and where they could go, Jeanette has the lists from across the country of different fabulous professionals who are engaging in different learning opportunities like podcast, or not podcasts, but pods and learning pods, micro schools, different classes that they may offer, different online things that people are offering. So the vast majority of educators who are leaving the system are seeing that they really do need expertise in certain areas, and Jeanette has those lists. So that is basically how you began Refound Ed, right?
Yeah, we're kind of like serial networkers. We're just like
Yeah.
we're connectors. So if
Yeah,
we don't have the information for you, we can connect you to someone who does, because
absolutely.
a lot of people that do want to teach. And it's not only those that teach. Now there's a
Mhm.
lot of people that are offering education within their industry, which is very industry specific, but it's great because they have insights through the lens of actually doing it, actually, because learning business skills from someone who's never done business, it defeats the perspective.
I think that's an awesome, awesome point, because there are so many influencers out there who are, quote unquote experts in certain areas, but they may have never even gone to business school. So it's interesting. Yeah, you really do want to seek out the individuals that are masters in their certain area of expertise, right? So that's, I do believe, what sets us apart as well, in that we know the issues with the school system. We've seen them. We see the damage that it creates in children. And we have lots of different connections that we can suggest to parents who are looking to either exit the system right away, or I do know that there are many parents who will be listening to this podcast who still have their kids in the system and are very disgruntled and disenchanted and know that there's a better way. And sometimes that transition is not as quick as ours, where we just jumped ship and we didn't have a net and we had to scramble. But I think through our experience, we're able to help educate parents on what to do and what things that maybe you don't want to do as well. So I found that out the hard way when you have never homeschooled and you come from a family of teachers and professors who really love the school system. There's not a lot of people to rely on for help, right? And if you're exiting the school system, you know who's not going to help you? The school boards or the teacher you're pulling your children away from. So it becomes really tricky, I found, because this is my journey of finding great homeschool material. I was at the point in April, or not April, August of 2022, when I was pulling my children to homeschool. There were really a ton of blogs and articles and influencers and accounts on Facebook and groups and Instagrams of all these people who loved homeschooling, but I found that I didn't fit in that model. I am not a trad wife. I do not make my own crayons. I don't have 7 children on a homestead. No fault to anyone who does that, but those homeschool moms maybe approach things very differently than I would. And then there's also homeschool moms that are very interested in different co-ops and different groups. And I have to say that was a little scary for me as well, because after the experiences we went through over the past few years, I didn't necessarily know what conversations they were going to be talking about. And I have um, very strong belief systems on certain things that are very popular right now in the mainstream media, right? So I didn't want to get myself into a situation where I committed to a homeschool co-op or classes that weren't going to recognize the values that I held for I didn't want my kids exposed to, if that makes sense. So I think that through all this research, I've done the research and I know, and we've talked about how if you're looking for something specific, we can really help you point you in the right direction, right? I knew there must be a better way. And
And
I knew I didn't want to homeschool my kids from 9 until 3 o'clock every day. I knew you could get it done so much quicker without the fluff of school. So we do it maybe 2 hours a day, 4 days a week, right? It becomes time
beautiful.
freedom for yourself and your kids.
Yes, and if you guys need help advocating with your schools, um, be sure to call Andrea because she has resources too. So if they're like, homeschooling is illegal, which I was told, I remember by a government official once, I was like, you didn't read your books, your policy books. That's not true. Like you're going to be fed so much different information, people will
Right.
resist. So if you are in a sense of panic, not to worry, we know quite a few people. Everyone has Andrea homeschooling, and there's so many other resources if you need to be connected to people in different industries as well. So why don't
You're
we
all so
wrap up our
helpful. Thank you, Jeanette.
podcast? And so, what
Okay.
is our why? I guess I'll jump. My why is just like Andrea, our kids are pretty much, yeah, like they're our legacy. And what legacy are we leaving behind if we have the experience, we have the strength, we know better, we have the ability to implement a lot of change because of our experience within the system, outside of the system, because we're at a place in our lives where we're comfortable with who we are and what we stand for. And so that legacy that we're leaving behind, it becomes this moral, I don't know, like right, I want to say that you have to
Absolutely.
act because we are capable.
I love that. That's beautiful, Jeanette. That's mine, right? I think any parent um, that has had kids in the system and sees the little things that are going on, you can't unsee it. Once you see so many of the major things, you can't unsee it. Like the damage that so many of the rules, quote unquote, rules caused since 2020, the damage in children will be seen 10 years from now. We're already seeing it. We're already seeing the mental health effects on children, and I could not be a part of that. I wanted to be a part of uplifting children, right? And instilling that love of learning. That was my absolute favorite thing about being a teacher was that once children start to find themselves engaged in a topic and just absolutely so excited about whatever they're learning about. And every single child has that natural instinct. It's that school is taking that out of them, I think. And honestly, my why for leaving the system was not only for other children, but for my own. 1000% the protection of my children was my why. I would, I think all of us who are mama bears would do absolutely anything to remove our children from any situation we feel is unsafe, whether we see it or slowly see it. I
And
hope that makes a lot of sense, Jeanette, I think.
oh no, it makes perfect sense. And just to add to that, like a big and tie to some of my background, what my oldest is on the spectrum, and he is find the people that were willing to take him, that had the grit and the heart to deal with some of his dysregulation, because we had tried to find resources when he was the age of 4. So 4-year-olds, they have their little moments of dysregulation, and the ones that were willing to didn't necessarily have the resources. And then the ones that, and then you have the ones that don't have the grit and are not capable. And I'm just looking at the options, and, money is tight for so many people, and to these resources for kids that are neurospicy,
Mhm.
there's not a lot of resources for families. There's not a lot of resources for the kids. And that needs to change. It's not if it should change, it has to change.
It absolutely has to change. And I think that is a really good highlight, Jeanette, that you mentioned that. I didn't want to bring it up without you. I'm glad you came out with that information. I think that Jeanette is an absolute wealth of research for any parent whose child is on the spectrum at all. And I think you really do need to be an advocate for your child. That is the biggest thing that I was seeing in the school board as well, is that parents don't necessarily know their rights. They don't know what's out there. They don't know what's available. And truthfully, you are always going to be the number one best advocate for your child because you know your child best. So when parents are relying on a teacher or support staff or quote unquote experts from school boards that sit around tables during IEP meetings, they are not necessarily looking out for the best interests of your child. They're looking out for truthfully, the bottom line, especially with school board officials on what they can and can't afford. So the fact that you have the resources and the knowledge of what is out there and available to parents in funding can be very, very helpful as well. Because I know, like you said, it's not if that needs to change, it needs to change right now. There are so many children who are neurodivergent. More and more every single day are being diagnosed. It is astronomical. From the time I began teaching in 2001 to when I left teaching in 2022, I was having at least in primary classes, because my specialty is kindergarten to grade 6. So in classes where students were just beginning school, little kids, you might have 3 or 4 or 5 students out of 20 or 25 kids that were diagnosed or in the process of being diagnosed.
Yeah, and
so it is an epidemic.
Yeah, well, and just the advocacy if you're an immigrant parent who doesn't speak English well, oh dear Lord.
Yeah.
It is like you have a panel of academics and you have this parent that feels judged on a regular basis. They can't sustain a job because they have to come and support their child when they're dysregulated. So you're picking between survival, and these are just horrible choices. It's just a rock in a hard place. And for those that are stuck, or if you know someone who is in that position, we know advocates and resources that can come and help support you in that as well. So we know lots of people. So whatever you guys need, be sure to drop us a line too. If there is a podcast you want us to hear about, to speak more in depth about, please let us know. We would love to be able to speak on the topics that you need more information. And we're going to bring lots of speakers along the way to try and fill in any gaps so that people can start to really understand that we can be empowered and take power into our own hands if we work together.
Absolutely. I love that. I think the whole idea of this podcast is parental empowerment, right? So I think parents who are looking for different topics, please drop us a line anytime. We are happy to speak about those issues. And like we said, Jeannette and I both have a vast knowledge of different professionals in the field or different people who have gone through the same experiences. And sometimes that can just be so helpful. And the one thing that you need to springboard different ways to help your child. So that is the basis of why we left the school system, why we created our own alternative education businesses, and why we wanted to start Limitless edX or Limitless Education Xchange to be able to talk about topics that parents want to hear, do it in an audio form. So we know busy parents drive around. You can definitely usually squeeze in a half hour of listening to different areas. And then if you want to expand more on certain topics, we are always here for you to reach out to as well.
Yes. So we are good every Sunday at 9 p.m. We will drop a new episode and everything will be listed. We're going to do it on a weekly basis. That's the goal. And yeah, we're ready to go. And Andrea had mentioned we are for parents, yes, and for parent empowerment, but for educators as well, for those, like, things are going to evolve so quickly. There's going to be a lot of valuable information for those that may not fully understand. They are going to privatize education, which is why they're kind of, things are on the trajectory that they're going. So we are here to help you navigate, advocate, and support that transition and show you what the transition will look like. And yeah, that's it.
Definitely. I think it's going to be awesome, Jeanette, and I'm really excited to connect with more parents and more educators in the community. And I'm just really excited that we have this platform to discuss certain issues. I think we touched on a bunch of episodes that will be coming up. So
For
I
sure.
appreciate everyone who took the time to listen to this, and we can't wait to connect.